Welcome everyone to Think Outside the Box, a deep dive. And today we're going to be part of Teacher Victoria's ESL class and talk about a really interesting question that we pulled from a presentation called Human Language Teacher vs. AI Language App.mp4.
Right off the bat, that versus in the title, I think that is really fascinating because it sets up this whole idea of competition.
Yeah.
You know, is it really a battle or is there something a little more interesting going on? You know, maybe about how human teachers and these AI apps can work together in language learning.
And that is exactly what we want to explore today with you, the learner. We've got some really great insights from Aiden on Talk Time for Teacher Victoria that could get into a lot of the details of this. And we're going to do is sort of unpack the strengths and also the potential weaknesses of both approaches so you can get a clearer picture for your own language learning journey with Teacher Victoria.
So if we think about this conversation a little more broadly, it really reflects something that's going on in education as a whole. It's this idea of how technology is changing the game. And language learning is a really interesting area to look at that because it involves this combination of cognitive skills and, the actual need to communicate.
Right.
So let's start by jumping into the world of these AI language apps. You know they're everywhere now.
Yeah.
What are some of the big advantages they offer to language learners?
Well, I think one of the most important things is just how accessible they are.
Yeah.
You know, if you need to practice your English at 3 o'clock in the morning, the app is right there.
Yeah, that's huge. That constant availability really opens up a lot of learning opportunities for people all over the world with, all sorts of schedules and different lifestyles.
Right.
What's interesting about that too is the scalability, potentially reaching learners who wouldn't normally have access to a traditional classroom.
That's a really good point. And one of the things that the presentation touches on is the fact that AI is non-judgmental.
Right.
You can make as many mistakes as you want with your pronunciation and grammar, and you don't have to feel embarrassed about it.
Exactly.
You can just kind of go through it over and over and over again.
That low pressure environment is so helpful, particularly for learners who might be a little self-conscious about speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
It lets them experiment more.
Right.
They're more willing to make mistakes, which is so important for language acquisition. And, AI never gets tired or frustrated. It just keeps giving you that repetition.
Right. And then you have this whole personalization aspect, which is really becoming advanced.
Yes.
Where the app can adapt to your level, can keep track of what you're improving on, what you're not improving on, and then give you, tailor-made content.
This adaptive learning where it's like, the app is adjusting the difficulty and the content based on how you're doing. That is powerful. A lot of these apps will use algorithms to figure out which grammar exercises you're really struggling with.
Right.
And then it'll automatically create more practice in those areas for you.
Yeah.
So you get that targeted feedback
that
can make your learning much more efficient.
So for someone who's just starting out, the presentation even used the term language lab on demand.
Wow.
It gives you that sense of, I've got this really powerful tool, right there in my pocket that I can use whenever I want.
And that can be so motivating.
Yeah.
Especially when you're just beginning. It lowers that initial barrier.
Right.
And it lets you start building that momentum at your own pace.
Now, this is where things get really interesting for us as part of Teacher Victoria's ESL class. Because, as Aiden points out, language is much more than just rules and drills. What are we missing when we rely solely on AI? That human element.
Well, here we're moving past the technical side of language into the heart of communication.
Right.
Language is so tied up with things like rhythm and emotion.
Yeah.
Humor, cultural understanding, all those things that are fundamentally human.
If you think about trying to share a joke with a chatbot, it might process the words. It might even understand the structure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that genuine human reaction.
Right.
The laughter, the shared understanding. It just isn't there.
Exactly. AI can process all this information. It can even generate responses that sound like human language. But it doesn't have that emotional intelligence and that lived experience to really get humor or irony or sarcasm in the same way that we do.
And that lack of connection is so important.
Yes.
Because AI won't pick up on those little pauses when you're trying to think of a word.
Right.
Or that little expression of pride when you finally pronounce a difficult sound correctly. And it certainly can't tell the difference between just, a quick sorry and a true heartfelt apology.
Right. And that just shows how important those nonverbal cues are.
Right.
And that emotional connection.
Right.
Language isn't just about the meaning of the words.
Right.
It's about how you say them and how you receive them in a specific emotional context.
Right.
AI just doesn't get that yet.
So that brings us to what human teachers bring to the language learning experience. What can they offer that AI just can't replicate for someone in Teacher Victoria's ESL class?
A great human teacher is much more than a source of information. They read between the lines, as the presentation says. They share their own experiences.
Right.
They connect with students personally.
Right.
And they're sensitive to the fears and the successes of each individual learner.
And they can sense when a student is maybe starting to lose focus or is about to have a breakthrough,
Yeah.
and just needs that little bit of extra encouragement to get there.
That human intuition.
Yeah.
And that ability to adapt on the spot. That's
Yeah.
so valuable.
And let's not forget about those humorous moments. When you accidentally mix up two words that sound similar,
Oh, absolutely.
a human teacher can laugh with you,
Yeah.
explain the difference, and maybe even share a similar mistake that they once made, which makes the whole thing a lot less intimidating.
Right.
Plus, the cultural context of language.
Yeah.
When a phrase might be totally normal in one culture,
Yeah.
but completely inappropriate in another.
Right.
That's something that a human with lived experience can really explain.
Yeah, those cultural nuances are so embedded in social interaction.
Yeah.
They require a kind of cultural intelligence that AI just doesn't have yet.
Right.
So human teachers can provide all these insights into how you actually use language in real-life situations.
Right.
It's not just about the rules.
And the presentation emphasizes the encouragement, the guidance, and the challenge that come from that human interaction. It's not just about getting information from one person to another.
Right.
It's about building motivation,
Yeah.
fostering confidence,
Right.
and feeling seen and understood as a learner.
That emotional connection is a game changer.
Yeah.
It shifts the focus from just memorizing things to engaging with the language.
Right.
Grammar exercises become conversations.
Yeah.
Vocabulary lists become real-life scenarios.
Right.
Personal experiences. It's
Right.
not just learning a skill.
Yeah.
It's about growing as a person with the help of another human being.
And that is the heart of Teacher Victoria's ESL class. Now, let's be fair. Human teachers have limitations too, right?
Yeah, of course.
So how might they fall short compared to AI in some ways?
I mean, accessibility and cost are definitely things to think about. Not everyone can easily find a good human teacher, and it can be expensive.
Right.
Also, a human teacher can only be available at certain times, unlike an AI, which is always there. So that's something to keep in mind even within a program like Teacher Victoria ESL.
Right, because everybody's got different schedules and needs and things like that.
Exactly.
And the presentation suggests that some human teachers might also rely on more traditional methods,
Yeah.
or find it hard to personalize lessons for every single student in a diverse classroom.
Right. Different teaching styles.
Yeah.
And the challenge of meeting everyone's needs in a group setting,
Yeah.
those are natural limitations.
Right.
And while the best teachers are great at personalizing, it's not always possible for everyone.
And we can't forget about learner anxiety. Some people just get really nervous about speaking in front of another person,
Yeah,
which can make it harder to learn in a traditional classroom.
absolutely.
And then the presentation says, humans have off days.
That's true, we do.
Yeah.
The energy and mood of a human teacher can change from day to day,
Right.
and that can affect the quality of instruction.
Mhm.
AI, on the other hand, is always consistent,
Mhm.
at least in terms of its basic functions.
So it seems like both AI and human teachers have their strengths and their weaknesses,
Right.
which leads us to this idea of collaboration, like a hybrid approach.
Yes.
How can these two very different methods actually work together for someone learning English with Teacher Victoria?
This is where the real excitement is in language learning right now. It's not about AI versus humans.
Right.
It's about seeing them as complementary tools.
Yeah.
working together to create a much better experience.
The presentation talks about this blended learning idea, and I think it's really cool. Imagine starting your English practice with an AI chatbot.
Right.
Maybe work on some basic phrases and pronunciation in a low-pressure environment.
This lets learners build that foundation,
Yeah.
get some confidence without the anxiety of talking to a real person right away.
Right.
AI is great for those drills and instant feedback
Right.
on accuracy.
And then you could move on to working with Teacher Victoria, who can focus on those more subtle aspects of communication.
Exactly. Things like intonation,
Yeah.
body language, how to navigate social situations.
And then after that,
yeah.
you could go back to the AI
Yeah.
for some personalized follow-up
Yeah.
based on what you worked on with Teacher Victoria.
So it's like a cycle.
Yeah, it's a really effective cycle.
Yeah.
The AI gives you that foundation and that practice,
Yeah.
while the human teacher, like Teacher Victoria, provides that guidance on real-life communication.
Right.
And then the AI reinforces it all with some targeted exercises.
And that just seems incredibly efficient and powerful.
It's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to something really fundamental about language.
Right.
It's not just words and grammar.
Right.
It's connected to who we are.
Yeah.
Our emotions are connections with other people.
And an AI can teach you how to say, I love you in English.
Yeah.
But Teacher Victoria can help you understand when to say it,
Right.
how to say it,
Yeah.
and what it really means.
The presentation wants us to think about the future,
Mm-hmm.
not as one replacing the other,
Yeah.
but how they can work together.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning English.
Right.
It's about becoming a confident and curious communicator.
And that takes more than just knowing the language.
Right.
It's about understanding other cultures.
Right.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Connecting with people on a human level.
Right.
And those things are best learned through interaction with a real person.
And the presentation ends with this beautiful thought. Every language holds a story, and even the most sophisticated machine needs a human touch to bring that story to life.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
It reminds us that technology is amazing,
Yeah.
but it can't fully replace that human connection.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the relationship between AI and human language teachers, inspired by Talk Time for Teacher Victoria. We hope this has given you a clearer understanding of the strengths of each approach as you continue your language learning journey as part of the Teacher Victoria ESL class.
So I'm curious, what were your main takeaways from our conversation today?
Yeah.
What have your experiences been like with learning languages? Have you used apps? Have you worked with teachers? What's worked for you?
Teacher Victoria would love to hear your thoughts on this topic and your reflections on this deep dive. Please feel free to send her a message about this class and your experiences.
And here's one last thing to think about. As AI continues to advance, how might our understanding of connection and learning itself change, especially when it comes to learning languages? It's something to keep in mind as you work with resources like Teacher Victoria's ESL class.